If you're pissed off that you're still the best closer in the company, let's have a conversation.
I always tell other entrepreneurs, I say, I haven't figured out what the ointment is to get rid of this sickness in some regards I have of being an entrepreneur. Anytime I hear people say we created our core values, it just scares the bejesus out of me, Walter. You say one of your core values is honest, but you just stole my wallet. I could say, I don't see it. I always used to say, and then they confirm this, you got that moldy blueberry in there. You got to get it out. You got to get it out fast because it makes all the other blueberries moldy. At the end of the day, it's actually better not to have core values, which I'm a huge believer in, but it's better not to have core values if you're not going to live up to them.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Sales and Cigars. I'm your host, Walter Crosby, the sales integrator with Helix Sales Development. I help CEOs get the sales department to run like the rest of the company. If you're pissed off that you're still the best closer in the company, let's have a conversation. We only work with growth-minded CEOs. There's no magic bullets, hard work that yields an ROI. So if you're a founder or a CEO who's stuck in the sales seat, the next 30 minutes is about your situation. Even if you love sales, it may not be where you should be spending most of your time. My guest, Jim Coyle, is an EOS Implementer, and Jim and I discuss several topics that can help a visionary exit the sales seat. Jim brings an entrepreneurial perspective to the EOS system, and we talk about his method of uncovering core values in your company, talk about uncomfortable conversations and creating accountability. So go grab a cocktail, cigar, and strap in for another insightful episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Jim, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to have a conversation.
Awesome. Walter, I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
I'm doing a little series with a couple of implementers to talk about, their interpretation of sales and EOS and what they're finding with entrepreneurs. So we'll get into that in a minute. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Let's talk a little bit first. I know you're going to say traction, but is there a book that you recommend to business owners that helps them think differently about sales or their business?
Yeah, in total, it is Traction. You're right. I mean, so Traction has been the most transformative book that I've ever seen on the marketplace. And I'm a hammer who sees nails, right? And so hammers see nails, and I'm an EOS Implementers, and so I see nails. The other one, though, if you told me, Jim, you got to pick another one. Recently, this has been helpful, which is interesting because it's not a recent book. But Great by Choice has been really hitting well with some of my clients. Jim Collins' best written book, in my opinion, mostly because he didn't write it. Mortensen did. And so I love Jim, don't get me wrong. So Jim, if you're listening to this, the one JC to another JC, it's not you. Some of your books are just a little dry because there's a little research. This one really hits. And I think is actually well written and is interesting. And so it's been really helping my clients think differently about issues that they've got coming up right now, Walter. And so that would be another one right now that it feels like is really hitting for my clients, which is funny because it's 10 years old, but it's been working really well.
Is that for more mature businesses or for people that are, in that first 3 years?
No, so now you got me thinking, who am I recommending it to? I generally don't work with startups, and so it is generally a little farther along. I have a client that's 120 years old, and so they're definitely more mature.
A little bit.
Yeah. But no, I think it's more mature. What's interesting is a lot of my clients are working on new things. They're trying new things. They're going into new markets. And that concept of the bullets over cannonballs that he has in there and a couple of his other ideas, it just helps them flush ideas out in a better way. And so all companies have to be innovative. I don't care what type of organization or what you're in. You could be in a really old industry, but you still got to be thinking innovatively and what's next. And this has been helping. And maybe AI is pushing some of that thinking, but that's another book if I had to pick.
It's an interesting book, and I would agree with you on books that that I think all books do research, but some of them try to explain the research and get into how they make the sausage as opposed to just talking about the sausage.
Yeah.
And it does make it drier, and maybe we should keep that in the appendix. But
Yeah.
because you're looking for that story, you're looking for those one or two things that you get out of a book. But in terms of of innovation, there's another book called Enshittification by Cory Doctorow. And there's like 3 parts to the book, but his argument is that certain companies reach a point and they stop caring and they stop innovating. And I won't give away the details, but he picks some of the big companies that we all know, and let's just take Comcast or Xfinity, right? They don't care. They're going to lose customers. They're going to gain customers. They pretty much have a monopoly in every little market. And their innovation is to do with just speed. His examples are Amazon, Apple, Meta. Once they reach a point, they stop caring about customers. They stop caring about their vendors. And they're really only driven by their shareholders. The rest of the stakeholders be damned. And he goes to great lengths of to getting into the details. There's pieces of it that are really interesting, but it's worth reading those sections of it.
That's great. I wrote it down. That's one I hadn't even heard of, so that's great.
And it's one that a title that, or a word that he created. I think enshittification became part of the lexicon, but was his. He had to create a word to create that imagery, which there is a little emoji of poop in the cover. So not to be graphic.
Well, thank you.
So let's go back. Talk a little bit about you're an EOS implementer. You've been an EOS implementer for a while. Great reputation, but what were you doing before that? What's your background?
It's funny, we chatted a little bit before just about kind of the idea of where this comes from. And what's interesting is that it does go back pretty far for me. I was an entrepreneur really from the beginning, and it was one of those. I always tell other entrepreneurs, I say, I haven't figured out what the ointment is to get rid of this sickness in some regards I have of being an entrepreneur. In high school, I started being an entrepreneur and really loved it. And part of that, being an entrepreneur is there's a part of sales and all of that, because if you can't sell your product, doesn't matter how great you are. And so I naturally was passionate about things. And then that was how I ended up selling, is just being passionate about whatever it was that I did. And so ran a number of my businesses. And I just realized the last one I was running was a bar and restaurant in Chicago. And I just was like, it doesn't need to be this complex and chaotic. And all the, this is probably another podcast, but I could tell you crazy stories about, being a bar owner in Chicago. But in that, I came home. My dad was sick at the time. And I said, I sold my business and sold my house in Chicago. And I said, okay, I'll go back, take care of dad, and then I'll, figure out what's next. And so I came home to take care of dad. And I realized that I had entrepreneurs from my town calling me like, hey, you've done this before. Like, what are you doing? And so I started to advise other companies. And I was young at the time. A lot of the entrepreneurs were all baby boomers. I was 30, but I was helping out these companies. And I started to teach here in town, just on the side to kind of help out one of my friends who was a dean at the community college. And so I started to realize, I really enjoyed hanging out with entrepreneurs more. Like, this was starting to feel like my audience. So I built a product, Nexus Business Solutions. I was born in 2004. And so what does that make us? 22 years old. That's crazy. And so I created a model very similar to EOS. And then Don Tinney, who was Gino's partner in EOS Worldwide, and really his first other implementer besides him, lived in my town. And so we ended up bumping into each other, having a meeting, and we're talking. And he gave me the self-published book. I think I have it here somewhere. It was self-published back in the day. And I was like, okay, this is pretty good. And it was a lot of the stuff I was doing because he read the same people, right? Jim Coyle, Patrick Lencioni, Vern Harnish, all people we had all read. He just compiled it better than anybody else. So I started to take parts and pieces. And then I called Gino. Don and I talked, and he said, you should talk to Gino. And I told him, and I was like, I'm going to steal your stuff and put it into my system. I said, if you're okay with that, which almost always people say no to that. Like, oh no, I've got, but I wanted to be honest with him. He said, absolutely, come on over. Hopefully you see value and you stick around. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I really liked his model. He was very open and honest and more abundance minded. And the more I dug in, the more I saw its genius. And that was 2011. So I started Nexus in 2004. I used EOS since 2009. And so 5 years in, I started using EOS. And then 2 years later, I became in the community. And now, of all the implementers that we have, 900 implementers, I'm implementer 16. So I'm the 16th implementer.
Was Gino in Milford at that time? I mean, his office was in Livonia, but he lived in Milford, right?
He did not. He moved to Milford somewhere along the roads there. I think he actually might have lived in Livonia, but he had where I ended up hanging out with him was he ended up having a place in, a hotel down there, but he had a condo in a place in Detroit. And so every once in a while, I saw him there and we hung out there, but I was never at his house, but I think his house was in Livonia. And then he moved to Milford when he got that piece of property downtown in Milford.
That's where I'm talking to you from, is Milford.
Oh, okay.
The ointment for the itch, right, is really what you were talking about. I think it's one of those itches that we have to scratch. And I don't know if there really is ointment for it, but it's...
I haven't found it.
Yeah. To a certain extent, EOS is an ointment to help that entrepreneur be more successful more quickly. Because I think the genius in it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the simplicity of the model, the simplicity of the tools. It doesn't take days to get people to understand what the model really is. It takes a while to maybe implement it and get everybody else on board. But the concepts are straightforward and simple because they solve very specific problems. Is that a fair interpretation?
Absolutely. We always talk about it being real simple results. It's simple but not easy. And I think a lot of people think simple and easy are equal, and they're not. It's simple, but it's not easy to implement. But the simplicity of it helps it to be used top to bottom. Most operating systems in the past, and it's funny because EOS has adjusted a lot of operating systems because of their thinking, was built for, there's something for the leadership team, the smart guys, right? And I say that with a little bit of irony. And then everybody else, there was a separate set of tools. And EOS was one of the first to have the same set of tools for the from top to bottom in the organization. I worked with an organization that had 300 employees, and the visionary, which I would call within EOS, but the world might have known him as the CEO, jumped into the maintenance meeting because they wanted his help on thinking something through. And so he wasn't there to make decisions for them, but he jumped in, and they were surprised that he understood the level 10. And he's like, I'm at a level 10 as well. They're like, oh, really? Do you have rocks? He's like, I'm using the exact same system you are. He goes, I probably screwed up just as much as you guys do, and I'm probably just as good as you are. It somehow equalized it. And he said that was really great for him and his company, that it didn't matter who you were. This was a set of tools that was going to be for everybody. And so that's one of the things that I love about EOS is that, the most important people are the ones talking to the customer. There was a great interview by a CEO. God, I can't think of his name right now. But they were interviewing him, and he's up on stage, and so he's in front of, I don't know, it was like 20,000 people, some crazy number, and there was people that were coming in, and he was like speaking to, and it's all of his employees. So it was a restaurant, or I'm sorry, a hotel chain, and he said, at the end of the day, what would happen? And he's asking the whole crowd, what would happen if I don't show up tomorrow? And everybody's kind of quiet. And he said, nothing. Everything would keep going. It would be wonderful. He goes, what would happen if you didn't show up tomorrow? He goes, things would stop. Things wouldn't work. Things would, come to a halt. We'd have to scramble. And so he said, that makes it you're the most important. You're the one who's reaching out to the customers. I am here in support of you. And I was like, oh, I love this guy. And I think when leaders think that way, ultimately they end up having much stronger teams and ultimately take care of their customers better. And I think EOS helps do that.
I think you're right, because that I'd never really thought about that everybody's having an L10. They're different departments, different levels. The companies that really take EOS seriously and run it that well are able to say that, and it's clear to everybody in the management level or department level that we're all doing following the same process, using the same language, having the same rocks, right? The accountability chart, all that is being used by everybody. It sort of speaks to core values as well. That CEO in particular had that humbleness to them, which makes them, and Lencioni talks about it in different books, tangentially, about being humble and learning from each other, and a CEO going into that meeting because he was invited in. That probably changed the dynamic of that other team that he was helping them understand that, oh, wow, we are all working to pull the wagon in the same direction. We're all using the same tools. So when you think about culture and core values, is there, I mean, we could do a whole episode on core values, but I'm just kind of curious, how do you help guide a leadership team set those? And then my follow-up question, so that helps frame your answer, is how many of them do you see operationalize those core values?
First is we help them to understand that you don't create core values. Anytime I hear people say we created our core values, it just scares the bejesus out of me, Walter. I'm always like, oh, okay. And so always a little worried, or if it spells something or anything like that. And so that always worries me. If it's by happenstance where they were able to actually have that happen, great. But not that it was then forced. So at the end of the day, they're discovered. They're there. Even for these younger organizations, they're there. I don't work with younger organizations. I'm usually working with organizations that are farther along. 10 to 250 employees size is the target market for U.S. companies. And so they've been around a while to have gotten at least to that point. And so because of that, they have a set of core values. There's something they're already doing. There's already normalization. And so we have them actually think through who are their best. So I'm talking to a leadership team and I say, who are your best employees? Who are the people that if you could clone them, you could take over the world? And they name them. And then they say, okay, what are the characteristics about them? What is it about them? And so it helps them ultimately just flush out really what we love about these people. And so we get all those words down there. Let's say there's 6 or 7 people. We'll get 100 words up on the board. And then we start to really pare it back to really what those core things are. And so we go through a process, ultimately do that.
You're getting them to pick ideas and words, not big, long sentences and essays about it. You're just getting them to pick certain characteristics about that individual.
Exactly that. And what's interesting is that that ends up being words or phrases. Usually I'll see 3, 4 words at max, with the ofs and the thes, but it's really 3 main words that we see, 1 to 3 words. And then we start to see them all kind of come together. Because somebody says they're reliable and somebody says they're dependable, and they're like, oh, that's the same. We're trying to say the same thing. We're using a different word, right? And so that kind of comes together, that concept. And we start to see them come together. And then there's certain things that are true about Margaret, who's awesome, one of our favorite people, but it's not the whole company. It just happens to be about Margaret. And so then that one gets thrown out because it's not for the whole company. And we pare it down. And it's amazing how well that works. I've done those exercises before I did EOS, and it would take about twice the time. And I don't think we came to as good of an outcome, a good one, but not as good of an outcome. And with the models with EOS, we get there faster, better, stronger, and we really get there for our teams. And so, yeah, we just have them really think about who should we model this against is really what we're asking.
And those are big picture ideas. And I can only imagine what that board looks like.
Oh yeah, it's fun actually. Yeah, it's words and it's spaghetti because I'm trying to connect the dots. Yeah, it's a mess actually, Walter, but it's pretty. You say the sausage making, that would be.
Yeah,
that would be a little.
But from the chaos comes the calm and the ideas that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So you build those into core values, you get everybody to agree to that.
Yeah.
And then, so operationalizing those core values. I have a client now who I was helping him hire a key sales leader. And one of the things I could say to these candidates was, there's a lot of companies that have core values printed on the wall. Some of them are posters, some of them are actually cut out vinyl and stuck to walls. And then there's a smaller subset of them that really try to honor those core values. And I think there's a smaller group that actually make decisions based on their core values. Do we keep this person? Do we coach this person? Do we make this business decision based on our core values, right? Is that just my interaction with EOS companies, or is that something that you see where it takes some time to get to that level of making those decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say all of my clients, because you asked the question in the beginning, do they operationalize it? And I would say all of them do. They get to that point. I had a couple clients that started and then stopped doing EOS for whatever reasons. And so they might not have gotten there. I don't know. But all my clients who actually go through the whole process with me do get there. Some do it better than others, but they're all operationalizing it. And one of the things that I'm always saying, Walter, and you said it, I'm just going to give it just a little different words, is it's one of the most important business tools. And so it's a tool and you need to be using it. And so this is a tool in your toolbox, talking about hammers earlier, right?
Right.
A lot of tool conversation. We need to pull this tool out. When do you pull it out? And so I'm helping my clients understand when to pull the tool out and then how to use that tool. Because sometimes you have to use it with another tool, right? And so core values are a tool. We use a people analyzer with those core values. And so that is the tool we use to help them to understand if people are living the core values. Now, here's something that really helps operationalize them. And this is where my clients, it's helped them get through this. I don't think people are comfortable, and I agree, by the way, I don't think people are comfortable telling other people if they have core values or not. I don't have a right, I don't think, Walter, to tell you that you have this core value or that core value. But I do have the right to say that I'm not seeing it. You're not exhibiting it to me. And that one of the best ways to operationalize it is just to tell leaders all they're doing is mirroring to their people how they are coming off to you. And you have absolutely every right in the world. You say one of your core values is honest, but you just stole my wallet. I could say, I don't see it.
Right.
And so the idea is that, and then you give examples. And so the idea is, if you want to have better people, you have to give them the right information to be able to get better. And so one way, we need to have people that are right people. They fit our culture. They love our culture. They fit this culture. And you have to help them ultimately to connect to what great looks like. And if you can't paint that picture, they're less likely to get there. And so I then like to point out your actions are aligned ultimately with what you're saying. And if you can get those aligned, the actions and words being aligned, man, you can have a really powerful organization. And that's the foundation to a great culture. And as Peter Drucker says, culture eats strategy for breakfast every time. This isn't just, once. Every time it will win. And so you have to base it on that. And if you don't use your tool of core values and then, the people analyzer, which just is a simple toolkit to be able, or a simple tool to be able to look at the core values and determine. Most of the time, I see you exhibiting that core value, Walter. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Most of the time, you're not exhibiting it. And then giving you examples of where I feel like you're missing. You're going to be able to live up to that much better. And so when I just make it clear and simple to my clients, not easy. I don't think it's ever easy having tough conversations. But the idea that they should know on the other side of it, there's a better employee, or you free up their future, which is my favorite new word for firing somebody. Just think of all the time you're going to have. It's going to be awesome. It's the summer. You're going to have so much time.
Right. Go be successful someplace else. It's the other way.
Well, that's just it. I think that if they don't fit here, they're not happy either. It's a win-win-win. It's win for you because you don't have to manage them anymore. It's a win for the company because they never fit here, and they don't fit here. Set them free.
But the clarity, right, is I think what EOS helps bring to those core values is being able to clearly articulate that and then clearly identify, you did it here, you did it here, but
Mhm.
these three things here, that's sort of not getting it. And then you did it over here. So like, how do we clean this up? Having that, because that, to me, people put those into tough conversations, but you're actually trying to help people,
Mhm.
right? So if we bring this
Yeah.
back to sales, right, that accountability conversation that we have with a salesperson,
Mhm.
the beginning of the month, right? Those can be great. Last month you hit your number. It's
Mhm.
terrific. Your pipeline looks great. So we're doing it again. You've had 5 quarters in a row where you've hit your number. This is amazing, right?
Right.
And you pat them on the back. You talk about what they're doing to be successful, the discipline and the consistency.
Mhm.
And it's just as important to have that conversation with the person that's doing well as it is to have the conversation with the person that's up and down. I see it as a sales manager, it's an opportunity. Somebody's doing it and then they lose it over here, but they come back and do it again, right? So there's an opportunity there to help them become more successful for
Mhm.
themselves and then as well as for the company and more importantly for their customers if they create that consistency. So I think sometimes we bring the idea of a tough conversation in our own mindset.
Mhm.
And if we reframe it as I'm here to help them. Now, do they want help? Right? If they don't want the help, now that becomes a bigger challenge.
Mhm.
Um, I see a lot of salespeople who are conditionally compliant.
Mhm.
In other words, if I agree with you, I'm happy to do it. But if I don't, I'm not going to do it. Right?
Yeah.
That's a core value problem. That's a attitude problem. That's a mindset problem.
Yeah.
And those are conversations we can't hide from. We got to go deal with it. So
Yeah.
when you see that in a sales department, I want to talk about getting that founder,
Mhm.
that CEO that is a leader that
Mhm.
started in the sales seat, but they need to get out.
Mhm.
And they keep getting, as Al Pacino said in The Godfather, they keep pulling me back in, right?
Mhm.
How do we, they want to get out, but they keep getting sucked back in. Um, I think there's an accountability component there of those salespeople becoming reliant on that founder, and there's a tough conversation there that we need to help them with. But
Mhm.
is that something you see a lot of the founder trying to get out and struggles? And what do you attribute that to in your experience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in some regards, it comes naturally to them. And so people want to do what comes naturally to them. I want to ultimately do what I am going to be successful at. And it does come naturally to them because relationships come naturally to them. The big relationships, that is something that they generally connect to. So visionaries, entrepreneurs, that is a natural state for them. And so that's why one, they get connected there. And to be honest, the company wouldn't be here without that. Like somebody had to sell something, or we're not running around, right? It is the fuel to everything else. Now the problem is that when they get caught there, though, because what generally entrepreneurs are not good at, and I'm saying generally because I think we can make blanket statements, but I'll say generally, and I'm talking 70, 80% of them, they're not good at holding people accountable.
Mhm.
And so they have a sales team and they complain about them. I was going to say something else, but they complain about them and they say that, they're not getting us to where we want and that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, so people fail for 3 reasons. There we go. 3 fingers. They are not right people. They're not in the right seat, or they're poorly managed. They're just not being managed well. And people fail for that reason. And I see sales leaders as being so vital that they're willing and able to hold people accountable. And you've seen this 1,000 times over. Your best salesperson isn't your best sales manager. It's usually the mediocre salesperson, actually, is what I see. The one who doesn't mind the forms, the one who ultimately follows the model, but they're not the best at closing and they're not the best at all this kind of stuff. That's what I've seen. Yeah.
It's just like in the pros, right? Would Michael Jordan have been a great coach? Probably not,
Mhm.
because there was so much effort that he put in, so much drive
Mhm.
that and some God-given talent as well. But he wouldn't be able to connect the dots for the people who didn't have that natural drive and that natural talent. So I agree with you. It's often that grinder that understands the process, understands what's necessary, understands the skills, and that has the patience to coach, right? Because there's only 18% of sales managers who have the competency of sales management, right? And the entrepreneur likes, well, you're great at sales, so let's make you sales manager. And it happened to me early in my career. And I remember my wife, I've told this story a couple of times, but my wife, we were at a Christmas party back when they were called Christmas parties. And the owner said, hey, we want to offer you this director role. And I took it. I was an idiot. I took it because I didn't know what it meant. So we're on our way home. I was telling my wife about it. She's like, this is great. Congratulations. But let me ask you a question. Have you ever managed anybody before? Because you can barely manage yourself, let alone other people. And she wasn't wrong, right? She threw a wet blanket over the whole thing, which I had to go out and try to develop those skills, right? And so I was reading books and taking classes and trying to figure it out as I go. But that ability to hold somebody accountable and hold them accountable like to a lot of things, but holding them accountable to culture is one of the biggest challenges to what you said in that meeting with all the other salespeople really doesn't fit our core values. So can we talk about what prompted that, why, how that impacts the rest of the team? And, I advocate, I would sense that you probably do as well, advocate for if somebody has all the skills and is hitting their numbers, but they're just a dick and they're just awful culturally, right? It's best to let them go and figure it out and find somebody that is, because that can be a bigger problem than somebody who's not hitting their numbers. I'm just curious your take.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always tell people that. So I worked with some blueberry farms, and I always used to say, and then they confirmed this: you got that moldy blueberry in there. You got to get it out. You got to get it out fast because it makes all the other blueberries moldy. And so people have used the word cancer. I don't like using the word cancer because that feels a little harsh. But the moldy blueberry ultimately does work. And so it's funny because they said that is in the blueberry farming, like that's the one thing, like you got to get it out fast. And so if you have somebody that's wrong people, they are completely destroying your culture and they are destroying ultimately your organization. And people think you say core values and then you don't hold this salesperson accountable because they're selling well. Yeah, they don't really believe you when you say that, you got to live up to these core values. Well, you're not holding that guy accountable. Why would you think that I would believe you? And so unfortunately, it can destroy organizations very quickly. And I tell EOS companies, I said, at the end of the day, it's actually better not to have core values, which I'm a huge believer in, but it's better not to have core values if you're not going to live up to them. So if you're not going to live up to them and you're not going to make the hard decisions, please don't do it. Don't do EOS for sure. Don't use me because you're not going to get better. And I only work with companies who they're growth oriented and really want to be better. And so, yeah, they got to make that hard decision. And I've seen it multiple times in organizations, the best salesperson just crushing it out there, but just not living the core values. And they had to make that decision. And it was hard because they were like, okay, we're about to lose X percentage of our business. Like, yep.
Yeah, that's it's really never as bad as they think it's going to be, but
never.
And it does take a minute, but you can recover quickly. But the other side of that, and we kind of we're getting towards the end of the time, but what I've started doing with companies is doing some basic screening up front to see if somebody has the right skills and the experience, but doing a culture interview before we do a sales interview. And making sure you pick somebody from the company who's like the culture police, if you will. They really believe in it. They live it. They drive it. They remind everybody about a culture, issue, and they force that issue, and have them help lead that culture interview and interviewing somebody, because if they have all of the skills in the world and they're just not going to be a culture fit, like why start the game? Why do it? Because you're asking for trouble. Are you seeing anybody do that? in the sales world or anywhere else in the world, in the other departments?
Yeah, no, for sure. We're always saying that, get cultural fit first, because the rest of the conversations in regards to how well they'll perform ultimately is not as important if they don't fit. It's funny because everybody talks about performance reviews, and I keep telling people, God, it's been named wrong from the beginning, because it's not just about performance. It's also how well they fit in this culture. And performance review doesn't say that. Um,
No.
and so I don't think people have realized that we've been using the wrong term forever. And unfortunately, when you use different language or the wrong language, you end up focusing on the wrong things. And so language is very important. And so I tell my team, stop using performance review, because it's not ultimately what you're doing. Um, you ultimately are people analyzing, or you're giving them quarterly conversations, to use some EOS language. The point is to help them to be better in how they interact within the organization and outside the organization, core values, right people, and ultimately how they're performing in their seat, how well they're doing. And so 100% agree with you that we need to start there. Let's start about, do they fit here? And then hold them accountable to that. I have teams that are like, oh, no big deal. They slipped a little. No, you gotta help them understand that. I'm not saying you're moving right to firing them, but you should let them know, hey, that's not how we act. And
Right.
so, cut it out. They need to know that, and we all need that direction. I'm a much better person because of my wife and the feedback I get from her. I'm a much better person because of my coach. I'm a much better person because of people giving me feedback. And if at the end of the day your people aren't open to that, and they're just not going to get there. And so
Right.
that's ultimately, you got to help them to see where they're missing it. And so to start, to your point, with that, a cultural fit first is great.
And having those, like, because you brought up, your spouse, your coach, but getting feedback. I think there's a piece of that we have to have the mindset that we want to get better, we want to learn, we want to strive to be whatever that particular thing is, right? Because
Mhm.
I have a coach that helps me think differently about coaching
Mhm.
and being more effective at a group level, but also you know my wife, I told you a story already about my wife asking me a really direct question,
Mhm.
right? And that forces you to kind of face things that you don't necessarily see in the mirror or we don't want to recognize in the mirror.
Yeah.
So, I think but we go back to EOS, right? It's a language, it's a vocabulary
Mhm.
that allows us to come back to the things that are important, right? Right people, right seat, the accountability chart, do we get it,
Mhm.
want it, and have capacity for it? Those are all the language that helps us be consistent from top to bottom. And rooting out that hypocrisy is really like I had a client who I thought violated a core value. He didn't, and I'm like, you didn't show up for the meeting. You didn't show up at the quarterly,
Mhm.
and everybody was asking where you were. And we didn't know that. I mean, that says something, right? That,
Mhm.
and it took him a bit to get there. And then once he realized that what he had really done, he was humbled and went back and had the conversations he needed to have. But, um, in the moment, he just made a choice that gave the wrong impression, and it wasn't what he intended to do, but it was what he did. So
Mhm.
having those tough conversations are consistent. Let's wrap this up, Jim. I appreciate the stories and the clarity. And like I said, we didn't cover the things I told you we were going to cover. We went down a couple other ways.
Yeah.
Um, Past or present, any relationship with cigars?
Yeah, probably past. I don't think he does anymore, but it always connects me to my uncle Jim. And so it's just the growing up that I was always connected to the smell of cigars or being around cigars or anything, and my parents were big partiers, and so was my aunts and uncles coming with a big Irish family. And so it always connects me to him, and always good memories.
Positive memories.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's smell is probably one of the most powerful memory triggers out there, right?
yeah.
Perfume, cigar smoke. Um, the smell of Italian family making Sunday gravy, right? That from grandma. Those are big memories. So
Oh yeah.
I appreciate it. So if somebody's interested, they're growth minded, they're running a company that's 5-10 years old, and they want to try to get better, grow, be more efficient, more effective. How do they get a hold of you? What's the best way to learn more about EOS from you?
Yeah, of course. Emailing me probably is best. Jim.Coyle at EOS Worldwide. Jim.Coyle at EOS Worldwide is probably the best way to reach out and jump on a phone call just if you want to learn more.
All right, we'll have all of that in the show notes, plus your website. Again, I appreciate the insights and the time, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Walter.